Transitions happen. We break up from our partner, we lose a relationship, we move homes, we get sick and have to adapt to a new way of life. Someone dies. Transitions happen, and today we're going to bring on Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. to talk about transitions and how we can move through transitions in a state of grace and ease, and some really beautiful tips on how to make transition easy.
Welcome to Thriving Launch with Louise Congdon and Kamala Chambers, the show for heart-centered entrepreneurs who want it all.
5 days a week, we bring you different segments to inspire you to live a life of freedom. We interview the leading experts in the field of business, health, and love. Be sure to check out Training Tuesdays, where we give you a clear action plan to grow your own business.
How would you like to be able to interview world-class experts, sit down and have chats with people like Jack Canfield, Marianne Williamson, Robert Kiyosaki, Tim Ferriss, you name it? Would you love to interview other people that you really admire and consider to be your heroes? Well, we've created a course for you that teaches you how to podcast, how to set it all up, and how to get going so that you can really have a successful show and you can do it properly. Over at thrivinglaunch.com, we have a podcasting course, and it's there for you, waiting for you to snatch it up. So head on over to thrivinglaunch.com and let me teach you how to podcast the right way. Today's guest is Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. He's somebody that I absolutely love. He's got so much wisdom to share. He was trained by his father, Don Miguel Ruiz Sr., who wrote the book, The Four Agreements. And Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. has his own spin and a fantastic way to bring to life the Toltec wisdom. So in today's interview, I'm really honored and just really grateful that Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. has come on the show to grace us with his presence and wisdom.
It is so great to have you on the show. Are you ready to launch and dive in, Miguel?
Hi, Kamala. Yes, thank you so much. How are you?
Oh, we're doing so lovely because we're sitting here with you, right, Louise?
That's right. We're going to be talking about transitions, shifts, and going through this process. Right now, you're in the process of moving, but in life, all of us are dealing with some sort of transition at some point or another, either the loss of somebody, the birth of a child, moving homes, changing. How is that for you to go through this transition, and how does the Toltec wisdom kind of help you to move through this space?
It's all about life, really. I remember that time when I was a child, when my father took me to the park one day, and after playing some time, my dad found me crying on the edge of it. And he asked me why I'm crying. And I said, I was too big for the swings. I'm too big to play. And I was so sad because it's something that even, if I remember, it was something I enjoyed to do. It's something I love to do. And I was so carefree about it. And then there came the day where I went to the swings, I went to the park, and I was too big. I couldn't fit. It wasn't comfortable, and I lost something, and it was heartbreaking. And right now, we're transitioning. We're making the slow process moving. It's always slow, and it's a process of moving from California to Nevada. And I'm watching not just myself transition and my wife transition, but I'm watching my kids, and it's the same concept. We live in a home that we love. We love enjoying it, and we get to the point where it no longer fits. The lifestyle doesn't fit, the functionality doesn't fit, and it's time for a transition in order to adapt to a new reality. Part of it, like we were saying before the show, some of the toughest transitions are life and when someone passes and when someone is born. And it's so true because my younger brother is having a new baby in next month. So we're going to have a new Ruiz member. And that's a transition. That's one of the reasons why we're moving. And it all comes down to attachment. The attachment of a dream that we thoroughly enjoyed, that we thrived in, that we made bonds that were lifetime bonds. We have neighbors and friends whom we're going to be friends for the rest of our lives. We know that. And yet there's a moment where it doesn't fit anymore, and we're going to transition to a new place, and we're going into the unknown. And in the unknown, certain patterns we know will repeat themselves, but it's still the unknown. And a huge part of us emotionally wants to hold on to something that makes us happy, makes us feel comfortable. But sometimes transition and growth comes from going into the uncomfortable and doing what is best for the family and learning how to play again, relearning. And that's something that happens when we're transitioning, that we think we can't do this again. We will, like someone who goes through a breakup, and the first thought is, I'm never going to love again. How am I going to fall in love again? I will never have a relationship like that. And then you find that the next relationship is even bigger and better than the last one, because you found a relationship that fit who you are as an individual. So it all comes down to this becoming aware of ourselves and our ability to take a step forward, to make a choice, and take the leap, or some would say take the risk, but it's really not a risk. It's just simply take the step to the new stage in life. And whether it's the death of someone we love, whether it's the birth of someone we're going to love, or just simply letting go of a dream where you saw your kids grow up for the last 6 years, to go into a dream where they're not going to be the kids, they're going to be the teenagers, and where their teenage years are going to be. It's life transitions. It's like the serpent that sheds its skin. And because he loves the skin so much, he carries with him wherever he goes all the skins he's left behind. And it's just a huge mess. But in order to survive, you let go of it all and engage the new environment. That's a lot. I just went to a lot of places.
Something I really love about what you said is learning how to play again. And once we move into a new space, it's almost like we have to find who we are again in that new space, in that new situation, in that new relationship, in that new home. And I love that you brought play into it. Do you have any practices or exercises or tips on how to bring more of that delight into the new experience?
Well, practices, it's like, I remember there's a joke that Woody Allen says, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Funny enough, my grandma used to say the same thing. It's one of those things that, it's like, I watched my little girl. Today was the first day of school today, and she's going to school, even though we're doing transition, and she's going to continue with on. And here she was planning how her day is going to be. She's planning her clothes. She's planning what she's going to say. She's engaged in this. She has all this thing prepared. And then she shows up, and everything she thought of wasn't really going to apply, because the environment, the teacher already changed everything enough that her whole routine just changed. And she has to improvise. And there it goes. In reality, when we enter a new stage, you're relying more on your ability to improvise in the new environment, to re-engage the new environment, which is to be in awe of the new environment, which is to be aware of where your new setting is, to become aware of what the environment is like, who the people are, which is the willingness to see again. Instead of projecting onto life what you want to see and expecting that's what you're going to see, that's where everything falls apart. That's where the emotional reaction, negative emotional reaction, kicks in, because it's not going as you plan. It's not going as you think it should be. People are not behaving the way you think they are, because you're already going into a scenario with a preset of ideas and beliefs that to some degree we're attached to. But if we learn to detach and be willing to be in awe of the environment, to learn not to expect a single thing, allows us to be better prepared for what's ahead, because the constant is oneself. So if anything, the one thing that you can expect to see is you. You are the constant in every room you're in. You're the constant in every cycle you're in. Even as we transition into a new stage in life, you are the constant. So if there's a practice in applying towards transition is learning not to project or anticipate how it will be, even though it's fun to come up with potential stories, but not to get attached to them so that we can actually see what's in front of us. And it's true, not just with new environments, but within ourselves. So the practice simply means to take in a breath, allow yourself to take that breath and focus all your attention there and realize that is the beginning point. When you open your eyes, you're starting a new transition. You're starting a new stage in life. What do you see? What do you hear? What are you engaging? And from there, inspiration comes in. Because instead of thinking of what should be, you see what is, and you get to play with that clay.
This really reminds me a lot of your last book, where you talked about how you were watching a soccer game and there was these announcers that were telling you about the athlete and what he was up to, what was going on in his life. And then they're giving you a play-by-play, not just of the game, but they're also informing you of who it is and kind of shaping your opinions of what's happening. And you talked about watching that game on mute. That's a big process, and to shut down that narrator. And I don't know about you, Kamala, but sometimes I really struggle turning that narrator off. I have a lot of opinions about what's happening, who someone is, and that narrator sometimes gets in the way.
Yeah, the stories that we tell ourselves. And I think it's kind of most humans are built to kind of create stories about what each moment is bringing, what people are bringing, who people are, stories about ourselves even. And I think that could really get in the way in a time of transition. And I love the way that you've reframed it for us here. What is something else that you feel is kind of a stumbling block for people going through transitions?
Well, I'm going to combine that question with the comment of the commentators, the narrators, because it's the emotional factor in, like personal journey or personal transformation could be easy if we were all robots, devoid of any emotion. If we allow simply logic to reign in our bodies, then we wouldn't need self-help. It's easy. It's easy to transition, but we are emotional beings. We are beings who perceive life throughout this spectrum of emotions, ranging from complete joy to complete anger to complete misery. And we go through all of those stages. We get to that, experience that, and our emotions are real. What may trigger them may not be. And that's where the combination of the narrators kick in, because our narrators are the voice of our thoughts, what my father would call the voice of knowledge. The narrators are basically our thoughts, our beliefs, and ideas. And the thing about a narrator, which simply is a word to describe that voice of that train of thought that happens in our mind, is that the same energy I use to move my leg, to move my arm, is the same energy I use to create a thought. And at the root of every belief I have, there is a yes, giving it life. There's nothing in my belief system that I say no to. Thus, our narrators are there because we give them life. So we're telling the story. We love to tell stories. We love to put into words what we're perceiving. Like the expression, actions speak louder than words. But we use words to describe every action. And that's the thing. We describe actions with our words, and those words have an emotional charge. We can paint a scary painting, a scary story, or the most illuminating, hilarious, wonderful experience. It can be shifted immediately. We can paint the moving to transition as this, I'm never going to love again, or I'm never going to experience happiness again. I'm never going to make friends the way I had them here. And when you paint that picture with that narrator, then the unknown, which is the future, looks grim, looks dreary, it looks terrible. But if you see it from the point of view of joy, I guess happiness is, I'm thinking of Inside Out now. That TV movie. If all of a sudden you try to spin it all to, it's going to be happy, it's going to be great, But when you begin to respect your emotions, such as in the movie, you learn to respect sadness. Joy was always trying to overrule sadness and never allow her to drive the bus or drive the Carly or whatever her name is. But when you respect that the emotions are real and you respect what our emotions are, you find that they have great benefit. And when that happens, you're no longer allowing the emotions to take action for us. We take the action. That's the whole point of the mastery of self, that we become aware that I control my yes and I control my no. I control the energy that animates this body, that animates this mind. But in honoring our emotions, which is that thing that clouds our perception when we move, or a transition, that thing that blinds us, and what fuels our narrator story. When we honor our emotions, we're no longer blinded by our emotions. We get to see what's in front of us, which is something very important, because in front of us are multi-billion opportunities. There's an infinity of possibilities in front of us. For example, in my case, the move to Reno could be disastrous, or it could be the most wonderful experience there is, because we're moving to be near my brother and his wife and new baby Julius. That's the new baby that's coming into the world. We get to rebuild our dream around family. The kids have a place to run around in near Lake Tahoe. There's this story, and of course things that can go wrong, but that's going to be truth if we stay in Rockland or not. So it's about who is telling the story. Who am I allowing to tell the story? Am I allowing my emotions to tell the story, or am I allowing life to tell the story? And when we allow life to tell the story, then we can clear the narrator. Because when life tells a story, you realize that it's a dance between the choices I make in life and the consequence that life gives back. It's a beautiful balance. If, for example, we just made 3 offers and we changed our mind on the first 2 because we realized, we like that house. I don't like that. Let's rescind it. Let's make an offer on that one. No, you know what? I don't like it. Let's rescind it. You know what? I like that one. And that one felt good. To be able to trust your own judgment, to be able to trust your own capacity to change your mind, and when it's needed, because all of a sudden you realize that, you know what, that's not going to reflect my reality. And not because I'm being fickle or being wishy-washy. It's because I'm realizing that the consequences of that choice may not reflect the consequences I want to experience in life. And then allowing myself to change my mind, to respect myself, to have a voice, allows me to finally find that one place where I said, you know what? I like it. I want it. And it's the correct one when you make the choice and it feels good and there's no doubt behind it. And that's how you clear the narrator. The narrator can either be the parasite, which is basically it distorts everything I see. It controls my actions. It controls my judgment of myself. It controls me through this image of like, no, you have to fulfill because you got to do this, you got to do that. Or you have the narrator be the ally. And the ally is the one that tells the story that reflects life as is, as opposed to a narrator that describes life as an illusion. And to me, that's where the whole point of the Toltec tradition comes in, to regain confidence in yourself to make a choice, to express to yourself, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, and actually listen to it.
One of the things that you're saying to me that's really powerful is, not too long ago, I was talking to a client and we were talking about some of the things happening in this person's life and what was going on. And as I listened, I could hear the narrator and how the narrator wasn't really supporting this person and supporting their journey. And I started to play around with just the thoughts around what was happening with the client. And at some point during our conversation, the client said, I'm noticing I can actually decide which voice I want to listen to. And they were just astounded by this idea that the voice happening in your head was just a commentator, and that you could comment right back, and you could actually start having a conversation, and they could have a choice, and that could totally shift their experience. And that to me is something you're talking about. And it's a very powerful place to get to. I know that sometimes I don't always have the wits about me to be in that space, to notice that. One of the things that comes up for me that I'm kind of curious about is, I know that Don Miguel Ruiz Sr., your father, had a heart attack, and he was like in a coma or something. He was out for a while. And I'm curious, how did you see him change when he came back? To me, that's a transition, to have this moment where you realize I could die at any time, and my life, I'm not invincible, and I might not always be around. And there was a decision that he made while he was out. What's that been like for you? Has he changed a lot? What's that experience like, to watch him go through this shift, this transition?
Well, yeah, the man that came back from the coma was not the same man that went into the coma, that's for sure. And the reason why is because life puts these obstacles in front of you, and it's the time where you realize you can walk the walk, and as well as you can talk the talk. And the doctors told him to spend the rest of his days in a sofa, resting and all that kind of thing. And my dad said, no, I'm going to live. The man climbed the top of the pyramid of the sun with 15% heart capacity. That's how he left. We came back of his coma. He was with a heart that was only 15% capable of functioning, body full of pain, and taking so much medication because his life was balanced by a very delicate balance of medications that, people would give him all this talk and give him this homeopathic that, this medicine here, medicine, but it's like his body at that point was anything they would introduce would actually kill him, because you never know how a body reacts. That's the thing about medicine. There's a fine balance. Learning how to live with that balance was very interesting to watch my father do, and yet not allow pain to stop him from living was an even bigger thing. Like you were describing, watching your client becoming aware that he can pay attention to the narrators and he can choose. That's what we call angel training. It's actually very advanced work for us, because it's the moment where you become aware that I am not the voice inside my own mind, but at the same time I am. For example, if I'm the voice that's talking inside my own mind, who's listening? I am. I'm listening. Well, if I'm the one who's listening, who's talking? I am. Just like I am not this body, I am also not this mind, but I am the energy that animates both. And because my mind is this infinite possibility, because I can dream and perceive in so many directions, the voices that are going to be the loudest are basically the voices that we give attention to. And mind you, what I mean by voices is thoughts. The thoughts in our mind, because we're constantly interacting within ourselves. We're the individual dream. So what we call angel training is learning to be the messenger, and basically giving attention to the voices, or AKA thoughts, or AKA beliefs in our mind that we want to give attention to, because whoever we give attention to, that's what's going to control how I respond yes and no. So one, I become aware of that I control my will. And that's something I watched with my father. When he decides to take a step to climb the pyramid of the sun with that much pain, he adapted. He didn't run it the way he used to. He figured out a way that allowed him to do it, which is to do it slowly, take a few steps, sit down, have the patience. All of a sudden, it was an exercise in patience rather than strength. Because that's what we're used to, going up the hill. If we're so used to achieving something with this one instrument, and we think we can't do it in any other way except for this instrument, in this case, force and strength, to build up the strength of the heart, to build up the strength of the body, to go up the pyramid. But all of a sudden, if you don't have those tools, if you don't have the heart, and you don't have the muscle, then what you got? What's in front of you? patience and will. So now you learn how to use that instrument, patience and will, and you're going to listen to the voice that's going to nurture it. From that point of view, the voice that's going to speak the loudest is the one that's going to help you in the environment you are in. That's choosing which one to control, which voice, which narrator is going to help us. That's what we know as the ally. And for that, I am aware of what I give my attention to, aka what I give my power to. Which belief do I give it power? There's an image that my brother has that I love to use, and apparently it's not just my brother, but it's everywhere. There's a story of an old Native American talking to his young grandson. I believe it's the Cherokee tribe, I believe. And the grandfather tells the son, there are two wolves inside of you. One is good, one is compassion, the other one is evil, and it's the lack of compassion, it's anger. And they both exist within you. The grandson says, and if I make him fight, which one will win? And the grandfather will say, the one you feed. Whichever one of these beliefs and knowledge and ideas and the voice of narrator, be it fear or anger or love or compassion, the one that's the strongest is the one we give attention to. That's the way we feed it. So with that in mind, the change in my father after his heart attack, until even after his heart transplant, was the faith in himself. And who is he going to give attention to? The voice of fear, the voice of doubt, or the voice of patience, and the voice of resilience? Two will help him, two won't. One will feed the fear, one will feed his ability to accomplish what he wants. From that point of view, we go back to the previous question, how to silence the mind, how to take out those filters, is to become aware that the filters don't control you. You control the filters. You control what goes on in our mind. And we can, for example, my dad used to give me this technique. If you find that you're having a negative thought in your mind and it's making you miserable, and the way you know it's making you miserable is by the way you feel, the best way to change it is to let the thought finish. When the thought finish, redirect your attention. You see, there are gaps between thoughts. There's a gap between the first thought, and when you finish the thought, the other thought begins. There's silence between the two thoughts. When you become aware of that gap, you slowly first focus your attention on how your thoughts end. When you become aware on how to catch it, that you become good at catching the end of a thought, you shift your direction, you shift your attention to go in a different direction in life, be it by the sound of your breath, sound of music or something, but you're able to prolong the space between thoughts, which means you're able to prolong silence. And it's an exercise in the strengthening of the will, mind you, but it's also the exercise of becoming aware of the voices inside our own mind, the thoughts or the narrators. So when we are become aware of that gap, the game that my father always wanted to play is to teach us how to prolong that gap to the point where the gaps are long, because what happens in that gap is that you're no longer projecting, you are perceiving. And that's what I've come to learn. That's my experience. You begin to perceive what's around you. That's what the gap is. It's the silence of life that's allowing you to see it. Because when we have a thought, we're projecting. So once again, the function of the mind in the Toltec tradition is to dream, which simply means to perceive and to project. Projection is the thoughts. Projections are our beliefs that we have. Like we were saying at the beginning of the show about transitions, we're projecting into the unknown, a possible story that we want to have. And we may be happy, we may be sad, but the moment we stop projecting is when we learn to perceive, which is to listen and see and be in the moment. That's what they call the zone. When you become aware of life moving not only around you but within you. I found my father more in that space. And me growing up, like being in that space, it was difficult because there's a lot of consequences to my father being there. There's a lot of consequences in decisions and insurance and bills and all that kind of thing that we had to be paid because, to have a heart attack and being a 9-week coma, it's a very expensive thing. It costs a lot of money, a lot. And the wrong choice can really have a strong ramifications. So you have to be aware of what choices you make and how you do it, why you do it. It's those things. So my father usually calls this being in the eye of the hurricane, letting the hurricane go around you, but you stay in the center. And what I've become aware of is to stay in the center is to find that gap in between thoughts. And even then, going back to how we perceive those voices, which narrator to listen to. Well, when you control that gap between thoughts, you all of a sudden controlling what narrator is going to talk becomes a lot easier because it's like giving someone permission to talk in your presence. All of a sudden, you realize it's been you. You've been giving that narrator permission to talk all that time and to control and to drive. So that's where honoring the emotion comes in. Once again, we honored this is how we feel. We feel that sadness. We feel that anger. We feel that thing. For example, yesterday I made an offer on the house and I watched the emotional reaction on all 4 of us, my wife, myself, my daughter, and my son. And I realize as I pay attention to that this may not be the best place. I could have let the narrator in my head continue saying, no, this is the house, and force myself to do something that may not be the right thing. But if I listen to it and change my point of view and see what does this one do, then all of a sudden, one voice got happy, my daughter got happy, but then my wife didn't get happy. And her narrators were going off. Then we made a choice, and then I rescinded the offer because I witnessed that. After talking, all of a sudden I'm realizing this one made my daughter happy, this one made my wife happy, this one made my son happy, and now this one is going to make me happy if I just change my perception of this one little thing that I didn't like about it. And now that I changed it, I'm like, hey, wait a minute, that does work. All right, fine, I'm saying yes to it. All of a sudden, all 4 of us are saying yes, and that's the gap.
What a beautiful experience for you all to arrive at the same place. And I think that's kind of the trick that I find is important for me that I practice is like looking at choices and decisions and transitions from a holistic experience, that there's all these different aspects of ourselves inside. And for me, it's about getting all of those pieces playing together, all of the different aspects that are in alignment. So I feel that ultimate joy. And you're doing it with your entire family, which is such a big move and such a beautiful place to get to.
Well, it's a thing that reflects my love for them. To love someone unconditionally is the willingness to see them for who they are rather than a projected mask. And if we pay attention to what we were talking on the show, it's all about the projected mask. Sometimes we're so attached to that projection that we are forcing life to fit that projection, but sometimes life doesn't fit that projection. And when you make it fit, like trying to put a cube through a cylinder hole, it's not going to work. Even though you may try it, you might throw all the force and you might actually break it because you're trying to make it fit. It's not going to work. The way to do it is to be patient. Now, in that transition, what unconditional love is in that transition, the willingness to see life, to have, it's the fine balance between having the confidence in yourself to make a choice, which is to take that step into the transition. and be confident in yourself to not project what that step is going to look like, but be completely aware of what that step is. Because in being flexible with your decision, in changing your mind and going, this is what I want, there's a difference between having the confidence and having the confidence to make a choice and changing your mind versus not having confidence in yourself and changing your mind, not because you can't see what's in front of you, but you're afraid to make a choice. There's a huge difference in the two. It looks dramatically different. One is to not have confidence in your choice. Thus, you're allowing the elements around you to control your choices. In this case, family, a realtor, or a family friend. And they make the choices for you. But if you have confidence in yourself and you listen to the realtor, the friend, and the family, you're going to find the ones that satisfies all. And that's the one that works because it satisfies yourself too.
And what I like about what you're saying too is that there is space for all the voices to be heard and listened to, and then bringing it all back to where we started, of listening to the emotions and the voices in your head, and then choosing and making a decision and bringing everybody into play. Don, it's been a real honor to have you on the show today. Really loved everything that you've said. Thank you so much, and blessings to your move, and I'm excited for you.
Oh, thank you so much, Luis. I really appreciate the opportunity. Kamala, thank you for having me on your show. I hope you guys are having a fun time up in the Pacific Northwest, having fun. Hopefully I'll get to see you guys again when I'm up there, and thank you for the opportunity.
You've been listening to the Thriving Launch podcast. For books and resources related to today's episode, make sure to head over to thrivinglaunch.com. We'll see you there.
Make sure to listen to the next episode with Bob Ply. He's an old-fashioned, old-school copywriter. He's been around for a long time. He is the man to listen to. He's going to dive deep into copywriting, digital products, and how he's had his success online.